Torres wasn't the type to play the hero. He knew that, yet here he was, sprinting down the street after a black SUV, a Lincoln Navigator, judging by the make and model, while his friends were forced inside by two men who radiated anything but friendliness. Moments earlier, he had walked Jasmine to her car to grab her purse, only to catch sight of Blake, Logan, Allie, and Tyler being shoved toward the vehicle. Blake glanced back, spotting Nico, his eyes wide with a strange mix of panic and forced calm. "Hey, where are you guys going?" Nico called out, trying to keep his voice steady. "Just going to grab some party favors," Blake shouted back, his tone attempting casualness, but the strain was all too obvious. One of the men gave Blake a hard shove, sending him stumbling into the car. Nico froze. The SUV's driver rolled down his window, motioning impatiently for the other man to get in. Just as Nico took a step forward, the guy riding shotgun fixed him with a menacing glare, daring him to make a move. Nico's heart pounded as he read their expressions, cold, unyielding, and dangerously familiar. These weren't college kids looking for a wild night. These men were something else entirely. "Jasmine!" Nico shouted over his shoulder. "Get in and follow!" From his vantage point, on a slight incline, he watched as the black SUV rounded a corner and disappeared into the shadows. Without hesitating, he bolted into a sprint, grateful Jasmine had insisted he wear the shoes she'd picked out. She had found those Jordan 12 retro midfield purple sneakers on a thrift site, perfect for their matching anime costumes for Halloween. Now, they were proving perfect for the chase. The Jordans stood out, with vibrant purple panels against sleek black trim, even under the dim streetlights. Despite a broken inner strap and replaced insoles, they fit Nico perfectly. The mid-top design supported his ankles, and the padded collar cradled his feet as he pushed himself faster. Each step felt responsive, propelling him forward. He prayed the shoes would help him catch up to the Lincoln that held his friends. At 18, Nico Torres had a presence that was impossible to ignore. As the second of the Torres children to make it to college, following in the footsteps of his older brother, Mateo, he carried the weight of his family's pride and expectations. Standing tall at 6 feet, Nico had a lean, well-defined build honed by years of track training and an active lifestyle. His athletic frame was a testament to discipline and hard work. Nico was a striking blend of his black Haitian mother and Dominican Hispanic father, with a rich caramel brown complexion that hinted at both heritages. His face was a balance of chiseled features softened by deep, expressive eyes, warm brown with flecks of amber that caught the light in a captivating way. His long, curly hair was something of a signature, a mix of pride and defiance. His mother had always insisted he and his siblings keep their hair long, a rule he'd followed with only minor trims. He usually kept it tied back in a loose ponytail, though when left wild, it framed his face in a way that added mystery to his calm demeanor. While Nico's appearance drew attention, it was his grounded, dependable nature that left a lasting impression. People gravitated to him not just for his looks, but for his thoughtfulness and willingness to help. He was resourceful and composed, a problem solver who inspired confidence in those around him. Family meant everything to Nico. His bond with his parents, Mateo, and his younger siblings ran deep. Over time, Jasmine and her family had become almost as important, an extension of his own. He had met Jasmine in high school, and she'd been the first person with whom he'd had a genuine connection. Before then, he'd felt like a ghost, just another new face in a town he was still getting used to. It had only been a few months since his family moved to Sugarland, and everything still felt foreign. They had met in AP's statistics class. The bell had rung, and the room buzzed as students gathered their books and spilled into the hallway. Nico lingered behind, organizing his papers, when a shadow fell over his desk. He looked up to see a girl standing there, her presence commanding in a way that seemed entirely effortless. At 13, Jasmine was striking. Tall and slender, with long, graceful limbs, she carried a hint of youthful awkwardness that only added to her charm. Her dark, velvety skin caught the sunlight, and her deep brown eyes, almost golden, seemed to see right through him. Her thick hair was pulled back into a simple braid, framing her face and highlighting her strong, elegant features. She held herself with a quiet strength, as though she had already learned how to navigate the world around her. Without preamble, she slapped a form on his desk. "Sign this," she commanded, her voice firm and leaving no room for negotiation. Nico glanced at the paper, a partner exchange request form. He frowned, unsure whether to feel insulted or amused. For a moment, he wondered if she might be another admirer. His older brother, Matteo, had drawn a lot of attention after joining the football team, and Nico often found himself dealing with unexpected admirers. But this wasn't a love note. Nico exhaled, relieved. "You know," he said, leaning back in his chair with a teasing grin, "there are better ways to say hello." Jasmine rolled her eyes. "I'm not doing all the work," she retorted. "Find someone else. Athletes here coast through assignments, and I'm not playing that game." Her voice was sharp, her annoyance evident. Jasmine had no patience for students who coasted by on connections, whether through sports or family wealth. The school's hidden support system for privileged kids, a secret list passed among faculty, infuriated her. Nico's grin widened. Her defiance was refreshing. Even at 13, she radiated confidence, her wiry frame hinting at the beauty she would grow into. "What makes you think I won't pull my weight?" he asked, tapping the form. "Have you ever?" she shot back, raising an eyebrow. "I'm here, aren't I?" Nico replied. "I'm not useless." Jasmine narrowed her eyes, and they locked in a silent battle of wills. Instead of getting angrier, she pulled another paper from her folder and slid it toward him, a page filled with numbers and graphs. "It's lunch," she challenged, a small smile breaking through. "Work on this." Nico didn't argue. He pulled a pen from his bag and started writing. Jasmine, taken aback, had expected him to sign the form or put up a fight. Instead, he worked swiftly and efficiently. 30 minutes later, he set down his pen and pushed the paper back toward her. "My mom marks mistakes in red," he pointed out. 10 is off, but I bet you already knew that." Jasmine barely registered his comment before he stood, slinging his backpack over his shoulder. "Pick your half," he said. "We'll compare at lunch." She scanned his answers, impressed, then hurried after him as he started to leave. "Wait!" she called, tugging at his bag to get him to turn around. "What do you mean, lunch?" she asked, confused. "What do you think I mean?" Nico asked, staring back at her. "Do you really think we can get any work done in there?" she challenged. He held up the form, teasing. "I guess you got what you wanted." "No!" Jasmine replied, snatching it back with a defiant glare. "Don't be a jerk. We can meet at my house after school." "Can't," Nico replied. "What time is your practice?" she asked, exasperated. "We can meet after." "Still can't," he repeated. Frustrated, she pressed on. "What is wrong with you? This assignment is a quarter of our grade. Are you really that insulted? Do you want an apology or something?" "That'd be nice, but we both know you wouldn't mean it," Nico said with a smirk. "Besides, I have to take care of my brother and sisters after school." Jasmine's irritation softened with surprise. "Really?" "Yeah," Nico began, but Jasmine cut him off. "How about this? I convince my parents to let me come over to your place. If not, I'll pick you and your siblings up, and we can study at my house. Jack can drop everyone back later." Before he could argue, she declared, "It's decided," flashing a triumphant smile. Back then, Nico had avoided drawing attention, preferring to stay invisible. But something about Jasmine made him want to keep her talking. She was different, unmoved by charm or appearances, valuing integrity above all. Even if he never got the apology he half expected, it was worth it. For the first time since their back and forth began, he'd managed to make her smile. Now, as he sprinted down the street, adrenaline surging through him, Nico couldn't help but think about how his father, Oscar, would react if he were here. Oscar would never allow Nico to put himself in danger, even if it meant chasing down those men himself. Mateo, though, would have analyzed the situation. To him, it didn't matter what was happening as long as it didn't involve one of them. The rule was simple in his mind: mind your own business. Their mother Celine's teachings had stuck. While some saw this attitude as cold, they didn't. They understood it came from a place of love. They were everything to her after all. Much like their father, she had worked 2 soul-crushing jobs for most of their lives, even while pregnant. She didn't have the luxury of time to grieve. Her focus was solely on them and on survival. She'd take one look at any situation, and there'd be no question about what to do. She'd put her foot down, tell them all to fall back, and call the police. She had this way of making you listen, of cutting through the panic with just a glance. With her around, they wouldn't be running after anyone, or risk their necks. They'd be taking the safer route, no arguments allowed. That was the kind of quiet authority she commanded. Maybe that was why Nico had fallen so hard for Jasmine. She had her own version of that look. Not quite as sharp as his mother's, but close enough to remind him. Nico couldn't call the police. Not now. He had only recently met Logan and Allie, and while he didn't know them well, he'd known Blake long enough to realize something was seriously off. They weren't exactly close friends, but their bond had been forged on the high school track team, where they remained cordial competitors, always promising to beat each other in the next race. Their rivalry had been pretty even, with each win met with mutual respect. Even after Nico had to quit track during senior year due to an injury, Blake had continued running and eventually carried his talent into college. This year, upon discovering they were not only attending the same university, but even sharing a few classes, Blake had started hanging around more often.